Welcome back to Beagle Eye Vision's Internet. We're going to keep grinding here. We're almost at the Great Wall of China here in Titan Quest. And we are still on the episode number 11 titled Mental Schisms. They're getting deep, as they usually do. I thought I had more to say, but we're just going to go for it. All right. Thanks for sticking around. Staying tuned.
It is a transgression against other people's liberties when it comes to natural law.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very disgusting religion, and it seems like the same people. This is what blows my mind, and we're gonna kind of get into this. It's just, whenever I'm bringing up any kind of information that has anything to do with being controversial or something that I know to be moral, but a lot of other people don't agree with, is like this, the same people who believe in or who live the belief of social Darwinism are the same people who tend to be solipsistic and believe in scientists. So they're just very scientismic, so it's very interesting how it's like the same mindset. And obviously, my opinion is that it's all rooted in ignorance, because if they actually did some real studies and some real science, they would soon figure out that those ideologies are very destructive. They're never going to bring any real world peace, and never any individual peace, especially. And it's a very, as you said, a very dangerous religion.
It definitely is. And social Darwinism was, I believe it was founded, or at least, presented into society by Sir Francis Galton, who was the first cousin of Charles Darwin. And I believe this was around 1907 that he started to call this process, or the people that were studying his work, I can't remember if it was him or the people who were studying his work, started to call this process eugenics. And this is where we get eugenics. And you hear about this idea that there are those who are worthy to rule over others, and then there are those who must obey others. So it's simply master-slave think dynamic, It's just taking it into a biological, inverted scientific methodology where you're taking science and you're using it in a perverted way against your own kind to become God over those people. Because really what it is it's the belief that you have the right to choose who gets to live and who gets to die in society, and that you get to play around with these people like they're guinea pigs. I don't even like using animals in this, but that's how we use animals, unfortunately. But that you get to play with lives in this world like they're just test subjects, like they're meaningless, and you get to decide what genes get populated into the society and which genes do not get populated. And this evolved into epidysgenics, which epi means beyond, and then dis meaning to take away, or an inversion of something, and genes. So it's the breeding downward is what it is. So eugenics is the idea of breeding upward, breeding good stock, because it comes from eugenes. So what that means is good, and in genetics, genus, which means genes, and then so that's breeding good genes, right? So, but they want that for themselves. They want to breed their genes upward into society, and then they want to breed down the other genes, especially of the slaves, to a degree that they are easily controlled in society. They don't want to breed them so far down that they lose their abilities to produce labor in the society as slaves, but they want to keep them dumbed down to such a degree that they are easily controlled, but yet are just efficient enough to keep the system going. So that's dysgenics.
Yeah, and moral eugenics.
Absolutely immoral eugenics, So, in a way, we should be eugenicists at the collective level in the most positive sense, that we want to be breeding in good genes or expressing good genes throughout the collective. But we cannot do that through the means of violence or through the means of government or through covert means or anything like that. It has to be done on a moral standard. It has to be done through voluntary association. You know, like if I go out and I want to breed with somebody, it should be voluntarily and consenting on both parties. You know, that, you know, like I see good genes and good expressions coming from this individual, so I feel that those would be good in society, and I feel that it would breed a healthier thing into society by having a child with this individual, and she feels the same, so we both are in concordance and we are in agreement with these ideologies and this premise, and then we go out and we, you know, create a beautiful life form to come into this life and experience it and all its wonders, right? So we do want to have good things like that. We want to breed healthier, stronger, more intelligent humans into the world. But the way that eugenics actually is, the way that it's been done through history, is that it's done through violence, it's done through coercion, and it's done through covert means onto the population. And we see this all over the place with things, and I don't like to get into this stuff too much, but things like Planned Parenthood is a good example of this. You know, Planned Parenthood was started by a eugenicist, and there's no coincidence there that a eugenicist was the main founder of Planned Parenthood, you know?
Yeah, it is a very disgusting system or institution for sure, that is completely has got the minds of most people as like, you know, this great thing. And, you know, obviously there's some good things that come out of it. There has to be, but it's like people just, you know, they don't even want to do any kind of research to see where it really comes from and what it's really all about. But moving on, I wanted to, we're going to go into the human brain, because the human brain is what really needs to be understood if we're going to understand why we fall into these religions and why we tend to allow this type of behavior in the world. So looking at the human brain, we have what's called a neocortex, and this is the part of the brain that has the two hemispheres. You have the left hemisphere that facilitates the logical and scientific thought, while the right brain hemisphere is what largely facilitates creativity and compassion. And both of these hemispheres, when they are in balance, the neocortex is what sets off a proper role as the executive command center of the human brain, and true intelligence, which is intellect and creativity, they come together. So you have the intellect of the left brain and the creativity, which comes from the generative, the gens. That's where it's born. That's where it comes from. True intelligence. So looking at the structure of the brain, you know, when it comes to the behavior, the brain health plays a critical role in human behavior. So it's extremely important for human beings to become familiar with the brain's basic structure and function. This is really important, because if you don't understand this, then you can't really understand the world you live in. You can't understand why our behaviors are running all over the place and we're in such imbalances. And, you know, the three main complexes of the human brain are the R complex, which is the reptilian brain, and that's the lower part of the brain, the part that, you know, sits on the neck. And this basically facilitates the you know, basic survival functions, and it's all about, you know, the survival mode of, you know, the fight or flight, and basically what makes you get out of the way if a tree limb falls on your head or is falling towards your head, you're going to get out of the way. That's the survival part of the R complex. And then you have the limbic system, the mammalian brain, which is about facilitating the human emotion. And this is really, really the part of the brain that is connected to the heart. And it is what helps us have true emotion of empathy and care. And then we have the neocortex, the neo meaning new, and then this is about the human brain, which facilitates the higher thought functions and conscience. And that is being able to reason and, understanding the difference between right and wrong. You have the ability to understand the difference between right and wrong, and you have the ability to choose right action over wrong action. So we're going to get into that. But so when you think of the right and left hemisphere of the brain, you think of the masculine being the left side, and just so we understand what's symbolic about it is you have a symbol of the blade, which is the right side up triangle, and that represents the sacred masculine energy. And then you have the feminine ancient symbol, which is the chalice, and that's associated with the right brain. That is the sacred feminine symbol, and that's the downward pointing or inverted triangle. And it's really important that we look at and understand at least, some of the basic brain functions to further understand human behaviors and consciousness. And if by, whatever means a person's, neocortex, the top part of the brain, may have become, if it's become significantly imbalanced towards one brain hemisphere or the other, the neocortex, as a whole complex will cease to function as the executive control center of the brain. And this means that if it will stop regulating the process that takes place in both the R complex and the limbic system. So the lower part of the brain and then the mid part of the brain. And reaching this state of brain dysfunction, the executive control functions of the brain will then be downgraded and turned over to either the R complex or the limbic system, depending on the nature of the original imbalance. And we're going to get into the imbalances here in a second. But if the nature of the brain imbalance favors the left brain hemisphere, the neocortex gives up its regulatory functions. The limbic system ceases to provide emotional balance between thought and action, and the R complex begins to, dominate the whole brain system. And this type of imbalance then results in a being who operates out of reptilian consciousness and desires to dominate and control everyone around them and, living in fear. It's a basic, suffering from this type of brain dysfunction that would display behavioral traits such as domination, obsession, greed, hoarding, continual desire to control, compulsive tendencies, total lack of concern for others, aggression, cruelty, and needless forms of violence, or violence, period. It is easy to recognize this type of brain behavior in our modern social climate because for this type of ego dominator imbalance is nearly everywhere in our society. And the second type of brain imbalance toward the right brain hemisphere results in executive control of the brain being, stunted to the limbic system. This results in a state of victim consciousness in which the person can no longer control what is taking place within themselves and essentially becomes ruled by out of control emotions. And you definitely see that running rampant right now with what's going on with this pandemic. The R complex ceases to provide functions related to basic survival instincts, and a different set of undesirable traits manifest themselves. And these states include nervousness, paranoia, lack of self-worth, submission, guilt, fear, depression, and even suicidal tendencies. So we see that these types of personality traits are also overly abundant in our society.
I completely agree with you when it comes to needing to understand the basic functionalities of the brain. This is something that we covered earlier on in the CubbyWhole podcast. The brain health plays a critical role in the way that we behave, and to understand the functionalities, the components, the properties of our brain is crucial for us to come into understanding of like how we align our two energies, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine, with each other. The more we can understand our biology in that at that level and in these ways, the more likely we can fight against any kind of outside influence that is creating an internal imbalance within us. So it is literally about taking control back from the dominators of this world who have been hard at work to cause brain damage in our culture, so that we're not in the neocortex, so we do not understand right and wrong behavior objectively, so that we can regain our sovereignty of our bodies and our emotions and our mind. So when people fall into that left brain chronic ideology, right? Like we were talking about earlier with scientism and things like that, the left brain prison, people tend to become, like you talked about, more violent, more dominant. We can associate this to the abuser, and like you were speaking of, the right brain gets associated with the victim complex and the victimization of yourself usually, or by another. It can go both ways. We can victimize ourselves, obviously, but you know, if a human being's left brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, and we're constantly working in that area of our brain, the R complex of the brain, the reptilian stem, the cerebellum, will take over executive function of the brain. And this means that emotions will become dormant. They will become subtle, and they will become very suppressed, is a better word than subtle, actually. They will become very suppressed, and the individual will become ruled by selfishness and base desires and develop a personality based in control over other people. And I have dealt with a lot of people with brain damage, with TBI, traumatic brain injuries, and my father being one of them. He had a traumatic brain injury that caused him immense behavioral disorders as he was healing. And it's a prime example. Like, I have firsthand experience dealing with people that have brain damage, and to see how this plays out with people when you know that they have brain damage. For a person who has been around an individual that's come back from war, that has shell shock, which they usually don't call that anymore because of PC, but yeah, shell shock, or PTSD and things like that, you will see these types of behaviors come out, and they manifest into the physical world, and you'll see people become very abusive. They'll like to attach to abuse victim cycles. They become very narcissistic. They become very self-driven. They also become very materialistic. They have to hoard and make sure to get as many materials as possible, because they equate their own self-value to the accumulation of the value of the materials that they have. So if they have more things, then they must have more value as an individual. And the chronic right brain does the exact opposite, where you become, slave think. So you have master think, which is the chronic left brain, and you got slave think, which is the chronic right brain. So if, an individual or human being's right brain hemisphere becomes chronically dominant, then the emotional complex will take over. The limbic system will take over executive function, and defense and survival instincts will become suppressed. So you won't defend yourself. You'll just play the victim role. You'll also identify with the abuser, like a Stockholm syndrome scenario. And they will be ruled by their emotions and develop a personality based on submissiveness and naivete. So they'll be gullible, and they'll be very naive. They'll believe anything. They'll take anything. They become a punching bag for the abusers in this scenario. And this is the kind of relationship that we're seeing play out in our society. We have an abuse victim culture, pretty much, where the abusers, who are the authority figures, and all the other people who condone those authority figures, those are the people who are condoning abuse, which is abuse also. People who condone theft is abusive. People who say that is okay for you to go out and do that. That is okay for authority figures to go do that. It's no different than your friend who watches somebody else's partner beat on their girlfriend, and he's saying, hey, that is okay for him to do that. That's abusive. That's not a healthy way to think, and it causes harm unto other people, and it allows harm to continue to run amok within society, because what it does is it makes you not have to do anything, and you abdicate your personal responsibility to need to take self-defensive actions and maybe actually protect somebody else in that scenario. But this is that relationship we have. You can't have a master without a slave. They're directly connected to each other. And we have to understand how that dynamic plays out within the biology of ourselves. And when we do understand that, then we can start to mend those issues within ourselves. So,
right.
The mending of that is what I would call the middle path. So what that would be is like free think, right? So it's about finding the path of midness, where you get out of the abuse victim cycle, where you get out of the, what we're going to go into next, the next topic, polarization dialectics, which is, you polarize your two hemispheres. You polarize your masculine energy and your feminine energy within yourself. And as long as those two things are in opposition with each other, as long as they are in conflict with each other, your thoughts and emotions, your intellect and your intuition, as long as they're fighting with each other, then you're in internal dualism, which means that you are much easier to control by outside sources, specifically people, psychopathic manipulators who want to control you. They know how that works. They're top of the line when it comes to psychology. They understand how these dynamics play out in our minds and how they play out in culture, and they will use that against us. So when both hemispheres are finally in balance, when we find that centropic force, that centropy, the place of true peace between the masculine and the feminine, the alchemical wedding, the alchemical union of these two principles, where you take the upward facing triangle and the inverted triangle, the blade and the chalice, and they come together to create that beautiful star. This is where we actually have true intelligence. This is where the highest level of our learning and our productivity is the most optimal. This is where we become the most optimal, and it is also where we can create a better reality from. That's the only place we can create a better reality from, actually, is by getting into true intelligence. Because a lot of people associate intelligence just with intellect,
Mm-hmm.
and intelligence is not intellect. It is intellect combined with the generative capacity. It is intellect combined with creativity, and it's intellect combined with intuition also.
Right.
But that's actually what the word means, intelligence, intella, which is intellect, and ingens is the generative, the creative, the generation. And that's where that is born, is right in the center point between those two energies. And you're bridging and you're creating one of the strongest structures. So that's where we want to be. We want to be in free think because we want to build freedom, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's very well said, and I really like that you brought up the polarization dialectics, and it's what puts people in these trappings on, whether it be the left brain dominance or the right brain dominance or both. You can be completely on one side of the spectrum and on the other side of the spectrum. But, as long as you're not, like Brandon said, as long as you're not, having that union between the blade and the chalice, between the right brain and the left brain, you are never going to experience that true intelligence where the intellect and the generative principle or the creative principle comes together to give us that beautiful union where we're, right in the balance in the middle. And that's a very beautiful place that we're trying to help people get to, and obviously ourselves too. It's a constant thing. We're always trying to maintain some sort of balance. And I think a lot of people have that naturally. They're always looking for some kind of balance in themselves, but they haven't really done the homework to really understand what that means. And I think that this show is, really all about that. It really is all about balance. And I want to get into why we're not in a balance, because it's about understanding that there is control structures in this world that want us in one side or the other, and we don't even know that we're in these trappings. So we're going to get into the polarization dialectics, aka mental schisms. So if you could just picture the brain, looking at the top brain, and you see two hemispheres. Looking at the left brain, this is the masculine master think, dominance through being over intellectual, aggressive, assertive, heavily dismissive, and authoritative. This is associated with the color red, because red is the lowest frequency and the color of aggression. So if you think about the reptilian brain being the red color, and then you have the mammalian or limbic brain being the blue color, and then you have the neocortex being green. Well, there's a reason that they're those colors, because they align with the colors of the visible spectrum of color. And, that also aligns, it also has a lot to do with the Vedic chakra system. And, color, the red color is the color of aggression and survival mode, while suppressing emotion. And this is about, causing us to be in the reptile mode, like I said, or, in the R complex, or, where the ego is the most powerful. And thinking of how the right brain hemisphere is, looking at the right hemisphere, if you're looking down at both hemispheres, you see the right. And this is the feminine slave think, this is about the dominance. This is about slave think dominance. And this is about suppressing the intuition, this is about submissive behavior. It's about being passive or overly naive and overall obedient. This is associated with the color blue, because the blue is the frequency of receiving or submitting, which is when imbalanced and dominant. When it becomes imbalanced and dominant, it then creates the survival instincts to be shut down, keeping us more centralized in our limbic brain, so more in our emotional side. And, seeing that these aspects can really divide our minds, it's important to see the beliefs associated with these imbalances that really cause the separation. And thinking of the left brain, we see that this is the part of the brain that is chronically dominant, and it can lead to rigid skepticism. It also leads to what we were talking about earlier: scientism, atheism, solipsism, moral relativism, social Darwinism, eugenics, and of course, authoritarianism. So we've basically already covered all these on the show. So this show is really demonstrating a very left-brained type of schism or dominance. And so if we look at the right brain, when the right brain is chronically dominant, it will most likely lead to naivete. So being naive, having blind belief, religious extremism, and also this is another form of solipsism. Yes, the right brain is also another. When the right brain is in an imbalance, it also can lead to solipsism. It also can lead to unworthiness, self-loathing, order following, or supporting it, and being a willing slave. So all this falls under the umbrella of mind control. And it's about keeping people divided within to keep them divided outwardly with each other. It's about keeping us in opposition with ourselves, and something we're going to get into in a couple episodes is the dark occult. And, the dark occult are the, all-knowing of our brain schisms, and they are, they know what strings to pull to get us to bend the knee to them and their agendas, all because we don't know this type of deep knowledge about ourselves. And it doesn't take a brain scientist to figure that out. You don't have to have credentials to know yourself,
Yeah, they make us into marionette puppets, right?
Right, exactly. 100%.
Puppets on strings.
Pawns on the chessboard.
That's right. So, this is a mental schism. And I'm glad that you brought up, the fact that solipsism is on both sides of that. And I really enjoyed that you were talking about unworthiness also, because I see that a lot in the cultures, if you want to call them that, the cultures in our society that have to do more with the right brain. And our main goal here is to, get out of this polarization between these two hemispheres. And the one way that we can really do that is by studying this knowledge, studying ourselves, studying the occult, understanding what the true self versus the false self is, which I'm sure that we will talk about more in the future. But the left brain takes us into material thing also. That's something else that we need to understand. And the right brain takes us more into a little bit of spiritual think, emotional think. So we have to understand that our work is to be done here on the ground, head of the cosmos, but feet firmly on the ground. And to do that, we have to have a balance between matter and spirit. We have to understand that this is the spiritual plane that we're existing in, and that we need to take this seriously and treat it sacredly. That matter and spirit are not separate from each other, that they are directly connected and related to each other.
Exactly. And very well said. I want to let everyone know that this show will be continued on podcast 12, the next show, and we will be getting into the self-defense and non-aggression principles. So definitely stay tuned for that. And that is all the time we have today, guys. So thank you for your time and attention. And you can find more of our work at CubbyWhole.com. That's CubbyWhole.com. There you will find news updates, videos, and more. We hope you have found value here today. And like I said, please tune in to the next show, and we will go further into natural law. And also make sure that you tune in to show 13 and 14, where we'll be getting into the natural law principles, the hermetic principles. And that will be a very fantastic, important show. So thanks again, and have a wonderful day.
There you have it, another most excellent episode. I love the topics they were hitting, to keep your boots on the ground and your head in the clouds. I love it. So thanks again if you have made it this far, and a special thank you to Brandon Martin and Nate Cap. Actually, it's a funny story. I think Jasmine and I were actually living on the property when they started recording some of these episodes. And when he said I asked my friend who understands natural law if he had talked to anybody about it, I think he was either talking about me or somebody else who lived at the Skatopia property at the time. His name's Trendy Damien. So shout out to Damien too. I hope you hear this. That made me laugh. But that's why we started the grinding series. It's a way to get this awesome content out there and help the homies. And like I said in the last episode, people just don't talk about this stuff, and it's very important. Always remember that small minds talk about people, average minds talk about events, and great minds talk about ideas. And that's what they're taught. They talk about ideas on these episodes. They don't talk about there are some episodes where they give shouts outs to like authors and some other content creators, but other than that, they're if you think about it, they're just talking about ideas for the most part. So these guys are some great minds, absolutely great minds, absolute legends. Be sure to check out the website, get some. I know they have some awesome sweaters. I want to get one eventually. Yeah, check that stuff out. Yeah, during that episode, I started spacing out when we lived on the property. Also, just a quick announcement. At the time of recording this, there is, if you're in the northern Indiana area, there's going to be an awesome metal show February 16th, 2024 at Michiana Education and Arts Club, featuring Knee Deep in the Dead. They're an old school metal band. They've been around for decades. They have some awesome music, awesome breakdowns. If you're into metal, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And there's also Citizen Grey is going to be playing that night, and Innumbris will be playing that night. So there's 3 bands. It'll be short and sweet, $10 donation. If you do not have money to show up, they will not turn you down because the money just goes straight to the band's pocket for gas money. And yeah, so if you're in the area, come hang out. Beagle Eye Visions will be there covering the event. We'll be getting some music videos there. And also, Michiana Education and Arts Club also has their own YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. Go subscribe to them. They're huge supporters of Beagle Eye Visions. They allow me, Henry, Dead and on Sarah, to one of the only venues in northern Indiana that still books me. And there's venues in southern Indiana, like I could probably get some shows in Richmond, Indiana or Newcastle, Indiana, but we don't have a car right now, so it kind of sucks. We can't go that far down south until we get a vehicle. In fact, it's kind of looking scary. I don't even know how we're going to get to Skatopia this year. So hopefully we'll get to hang out with the Skate Pope this year and spend some time with those legends. So yeah, the whole idea of Michiana Education and Arts Club is to preserve and promote education, literacy, and the arts throughout the Michiana area. And they are also helping me, Henry, and the wifey, the camera girl, Jasmine, get our GEDs. So when it says they're promoting education throughout the Michiana area, it is not a joke. They take this stuff seriously. And just like CubbyWhole podcast, you got to keep your head up. Study natural law and keep studying, keep reading books, and be intelligent in a society filled with ignoramus dunce, as Mark Passio says. All right, so thanks again if you made it this far. Stay tuned. We will be pumping them out. I don't know if I'll be able to push out any video game content tomorrow because we will be at the event and I will be working at the club all day. So if I do put out some content, it'll be very early in the morning, and I'll be happy to get out any content tomorrow in between working. So yeah, thank you. Also, don't forget to go to www.gg.com. Use the code BeagleEyeVision to get 10% off, and that's an awesome way of supporting the channel and getting yourself some clean energy with no crashes and no jitters. So yeah, go support those guys as well. Thank you so much. I know I probably sound like a broken record, but again, thank you. And also shout out to the line of Epic Heroes. They recently made Beagle Eye Visions heroes of their YouTube channel. So shout out to those guys. Go give the line of Epic Heroes some support. If you have any questions about Titan Quest, if you have any questions about any of these episodes, please feel free to put a comment in the link in the video. Leave a comment. I'll answer all your questions. We'll start conversating. Feel free. Or if you don't want to leave a comment, you don't have to. We're all anarchists here. So no masters, no slaves. Stay tuned to Beagle Eye Visions. Thanks again.